Lower engine services. As a team, they'll prepare the vehicle for all services and they'll perform all inspections. They'll install new motor oil and filters, as well as complete the safety check. The customer is depending on you, so it's crucial that you learn proper technical procedures and customer service techniques. It's also important that you practice what you've learned, every day, with every customer. As a technician, your job begins as you guide the vehicle into the bay. Listen for any unusual sounds coming from the engine or transmission, and note anything unusual. Your facility then may want you to look for visible signs of damage to the vehicle and report them on the work order. You may also elect to perform a light or wiper blade check. This means that you'll check to see that all turn signals, high beams, low beams, brake lights, and reverse lights are in working order. You may also check the wiper blades to see that they're in good working condition. Always check all fluid levels. Check the washer fluid reservoir. If empty, add only a small amount so you can check for leaks or a broken or cracked reservoir before filling to capacity. Then review the customer write-up from the windshield, and if you have both an upper bay and lower bay technician, announce and echo the service to be performed. If your lube center has upper and lower bays, we recommend use of the call and echo system. Simply put, the call and echo system is a two-way communication system in which technicians repeat one another's commands as they perform the service work. This way, there is no question about what each one is doing. The call and echo system is proven as both a safety measure and a quality assurance tool.
15-point check on 2.
15-point check, bay 2.
Once the car is shifted into park and the hood is released, open the hood and make sure that it's secure. You may want to start your under-the-hood duties by placing fender guards on all 3 sides of the vehicle to protect it while you work. Over the next few minutes, we will review checking and servicing the engine oil and other fluids and parts. Before you get started, always make sure you have the proper tools and the proper safety equipment, which may include safety goggles or a face shield, gloves, and a thermal sleeve. Prior to servicing the vehicle, make sure you have the proper fluids and filters for the vehicle. First, check the engine oil level. With the engine off, locate and remove the oil dipstick and wipe it off with a clean shop rag. Now replace the dipstick all the way back into the dipstick tube and remove it again. Hold the dipstick over the rag as you read the oil level on the dipstick. Ideally, the oil should be halfway between the add and full marks on the dipstick. Some dipsticks feature 2 holes in place of add and full, with or without hatch marks in the middle. If the oil is right on the add mark, or below a hole, it usually indicates that the vehicle is approximately 1 quart low, and the driver should be notified of this condition during the consultation. If the oil level is in the safe zone between the 2 marks, the oil level is satisfactory. When working beneath the vehicle, be sure to use proper safety equipment, which may include safety glasses or face shield, gloves, goggles, helmet or bump cap, and a thermal sleeve. Some shop procedures may include an inspection of the vehicle's undercarriage before performing the oil change. If there is visible damage or concerns, the technician should report them to the manager for approval to continue. There may be problems like a dented oil pan or a bloated, overpressurized oil filter. This is a sign of an oil pump pressure regulator valve malfunction. Always inspect the oil drain plug and filter before you remove it. Is the drain plug leaking? Has it been rounded off? If so, notify the customer and check your store's policy before removing the plug. Place a rolling pan or other container under the drain plug to collect the used oil as it is drained from the engine. If you're using the call and echo system, echo to Tech 1 that the oil is draining.
Clear the drain on 2.
Clear the oil, bay 2.
Loosen the drain plug using the correct size wrench. Using an incorrect wrench can damage the plug. The oil in the pan and the plug are usually hot. Be careful to keep the oil from draining onto you. Inspect the plug again after removal. Make sure the gasket is on the plug and is in good condition. Check the condition of the threads. They should be clean and sharp. It's recommended that metal gaskets be replaced every service. Non-metal gaskets are only replaced if they're damaged. Always install the oil drain plug by hand. Make sure the proper gasket is in place and that the plug is not cross-threaded as it goes into the opening. If you can't get at least 3 rotations by hand, remove the drain plug and try again. Always use the correct size wrench to tighten the plug. A check chart manual contains drain plug torque specifications for all vehicles. Do not over-tighten the plug. You can damage the head of the drain plug, stress the threads, and damage the oil pan by over-tightening. When tight, wipe the drain plug and surrounding areas clean, as well as any other oil that may be dripping from the oil pan or cross members. Remember to always check for possible leaks at the drain plug. Use the latest Pennzoil filter application catalog to determine the correct oil filter for the vehicle you're servicing. Never assume that the filter on the engine is the correct filter. The last person that serviced the vehicle may have installed an incorrect filter. Again, make sure the correct oil filter is in stock before removing the existing filter. Inspect the new filter and check the gasket to ensure that it is seated in its retaining lip or groove. Loosen the existing oil filter with a filter wrench. In most cases, this is done by securing the wrench near the base of the filter to help avoid crushing it and to give you better removal torque when loosening. After loosening, continue to remove the filter by hand. Then drain the excess oil from it into the rolling drain pan. Always check that the used filter gasket is not stuck to the filter mounting plate on the engine. Double gasketing can cause leakage, which could lead to serious engine damage. Always lubricate the new filter gasket by using your finger and wiping it with clean Pennzoil motor oil. This helps protect the gasket, removes dirt or dust, and ensures the gasket is seated correctly, creating a proper seal. It will also make removal of the filter easier during the next oil change. Never use grease to lubricate the oil filter gasket. Review the installation instructions printed on the filter. Install the new Pennzoil oil filter by hand. Thread it onto the mounting stud and turn it until the gasket contacts the mounting base. Tighten the filter according to the oil filter's instructions. Generally, oil filters should be tightened 3/4 to 1 turn after the gasket contacts the mounting base. Only use a filter wrench if it is necessary to obtain proper installation torque. Wipe the outside of the oil filter and surrounding area clean of any oil. Once the drain plug and filter are installed, if you are working with an upper bay technician, echo that you are ready to add the oil.
Ready to add oil on 2?
Clear that oil, bay 2.
Before adding motor oil to the engine, check the service order for the consumer's preferred viscosity grade of oil. If the consumer's request is different than the manufacturer's recommendation, attempt to educate and switch the consumer to the manufacturer's preferred viscosity grade. If the customer requests an oil grade other than the manufacturer's recommended viscosity grade, note on the receipt, per customer request. Then check the current Pennzoil lubrication recommendation and capacities guide for the correct viscosity grade and volume of oil for the particular engine. If you have upper and lower bay technicians, call to the lower bay technician that you are ready to add oil.
Filling oil on bay 2.
Remove the oil fill cap. If using metered oil dispensing equipment, place a shop towel around the nozzle and oil fill to avoid possible backsplashing of oil. Also, be careful not to damage the rocker arms inside the valve cover with the tip of the handle. Add the correct volume of oil. Wipe off any excess oil from the dispensing nozzle and replace oil fill cap. Start the engine and check the oil pressure indicator. If no oil pressure develops in the engine within a few seconds, immediately shut off the engine. If you have oil pressure, let the engine run for at least 30 seconds. Inspect the area around the oil filter and drain plug for any sign of leakage. Shut off the engine and recheck the oil level. Adjust the oil level as necessary to bring to the proper level. Most lube center facilities have discontinued the brake fluid check and fill portion of a full-service oil change due to the liabilities involved with installing the proper fluid and risk of contamination. If you elect to check and add brake fluid, the following will help you determine the process. The level and condition of the brake fluid is critical to the proper functioning of the brake system. Inspect the brake fluid and brake fluid level. To check the brake fluid, wipe the reservoir cap and open the brake fluid reservoir if necessary. On some vehicles, it may be possible to inspect the brake fluid level without opening the reservoir cap. Verify that the fluid is at the proper level. If the brake fluid is low, notify the customer during the consultation. Low brake fluid may indicate a more serious mechanical problem. Check your store policy concerning topping off brake fluid. If adding brake fluid to the reservoir, be certain not to let any brake fluid drip or spill onto the vehicle's paint. Brake fluid is not compatible with painted surfaces. Be certain to use the correct DOT3 or DOT4 fluid, which can be found in the Pennzoil Lubrication Recommendation and Capacities Guide. Most lube center facilities have also discontinued the manual transmission clutch fluid reservoir check and fill portion of a full-service oil change due to the liabilities. If you elect to check and add clutch fluid, the following will help you determine the process. Some vehicles with a manual shift transmission may have a clutch fluid reservoir. To inspect the clutch fluid, open the reservoir. Confirm that the fluid is at the proper level. If there are no level markings, verify that the fluid is no more than 1/4 inch from the top of the reservoir. If the fluid is low, check the manufacturer's recommendation and add the proper type of fluid. Most manual transmission clutch systems use a DOT3 or DOT4 brake fluid. However, always check the owner's manual or a lubrication guide for the manufacturer's recommended product, or call 1-800-458-4998 for technical information from Pennzoil. Remember, don't drip any brake fluid onto the vehicle's painted surfaces. Replace the reservoir cap and wipe the area clean, making sure there are no reservoir leaks. Do not operate clutch while the reservoir is open. Vehicles equipped with power steering will need the power steering fluid level inspected. With the engine off and the wheels pointing straight, wipe off the area around the power steering cap. Remove the dipstick, wipe it clean, replace it, and remove it to inspect the level. Be careful that no contaminants get into the power steering fluid reservoir while it is open. If the fluid level is lower than the marked safe level for the engine's temperature, refer to the lubrication guide and add the correct amount of fluid. Note, power steering fluid will expand with heat. There is usually a full cold and full hot operating level indicated on the stick or reservoir. After adding the fluid, replace the dipstick and remove it again to verify that the fluid level is correct. Replace the dipstick and close the cap tightly when the level adjustment is completed. Make sure to check for any visible leaks and report them to the customer. Before you began the oil change service, you checked the ATF level. This is the correct procedure to follow. Always check the ATF according to the manufacturer's guidelines. In many cases, the engine should be running with the transmission in park to inspect the ATF level. With the emergency brake on, remove the transmission fluid dipstick and wipe it clean. Note, store policy may vary on this method due to the concern for breaking the brake cable if it is old and has not been used for some time. Some shops prefer that a technician remain in the vehicle with 1 foot applied to the brake during ATF checks. Next, replace the dipstick, and after allowing a second or two, remove it again. Hold the dipstick over your shop rag as you read the level. Ideally, the fluid should be halfway between the add and full marks. The ATF should typically look reddish in color, and it should contain no debris. If the ATF has a distinct burnt odor, it may need to be changed and may require a transmission professional to inspect the transmission's operation. You should inform your customer during your consultation if you detect this. If the fluid is below the minimum level, add small amounts at a time and check the level often. Like power steering fluid, automatic transmission fluid expands with heat. There is usually a full cold and full hot level operating range level indicated on the stick. Only fill to the full cold. This will prevent overflow when the engine and fluid heats up. Always refill or top off with the correct ATF. Do not overfill the transmission. Note, some newer model transmissions are sealed and cannot be checked. Check your check chart information or call the Pennzoil Technical Service Hotline for application questions. All vehicles require outside air to assist the burning of fuel. The air filter removes dust, dirt, and other harmful particles before they can reach the engine. Because of these contaminants, the air filter needs to be inspected and periodically replaced to maintain proper fuel efficiency and engine performance. First, clean the outside of the air filter housing. Next, open the housing, which is usually secured with wing nuts or clamps. Make sure that no foreign material drops into the air filter housing or inlet. Remove and inspect the air filter. The filter should be replaced if it is excessively dirty or damaged. Hold the filter up to the light to see how much light passes through it. An effective filter will allow plenty of light to pass through it. Reference the year, make, and model of the vehicle you're servicing and identify the appropriate Pennzoil air filter in the catalog. Make sure the customer wants a replacement before replacing a filter so they're aware of any extra charges. Never attempt to clean the air filter by blowing it with compressed shop air or tapping the filter against a hard surface, which would damage it. Clean the inside of the housing with a shop rag or vacuum. Place the new air filter in the housing and reassemble it. Make sure the filter is seated properly and the housing seals properly. Verify that the wing nuts or clamps are tightened down. Cabin air filters can be found on various newer model vehicles. You can elect to include this service as part of the air filtration check. Some are more difficult to change than others and may require special tools. Many vehicles today have maintenance-free batteries. However, you'll still need to inspect the battery for any signs of visible problems such as dirty, corroded terminals or loose or corroded mounting brackets. Always be careful not to touch any metal objects to the battery. On maintenance-free batteries, check the charge indicator on the battery. A dark indicator with the green dot means the battery charge and fluid are okay. A dark indicator without a green dot means the battery may need charging. And a light or clear indicator may mean the battery is low on fluid and may need charging or replacing. You should always report the battery condition to your customer during the consultation. If the vehicle has a regular maintenance battery, follow these steps. Remove the battery cap and inspect the water level inside each cell. An indented ring inside indicates the proper water level. If the battery is low, use a battery filler and distilled or deionized water to raise the level. Do not use tap water or a water hose. Do not overfill. Replace the battery caps and verify that they are tight. Some vehicles contain a positive crankcase ventilation system, or PCV system, which draws gasoline fumes and engine emissions out of the engine crankcase and recirculates them back to the combustion chamber. This helps the engine run cleaner and helps reduce air pollution. These fumes pass through the PCV valve on their way to the engine intake manifold. For the PCV system to operate properly, the PCV valve must be clean. The PCV valve is usually found within a rubber grommet on top of one of the valve covers. To inspect the valve, leave the vehicle engine running. Pull the PCV valve from its housing and place a finger over the opening. You should feel a vacuum and the engine idle should drop approximately 40 to 80 RPMs. If you feel no vacuum, the valve may be clogged. The PCV valve should be replaced if it is clogged or stuck, or if the manufacturer's recommended change interval has elapsed since the last change. You can refer to the check chart manual if necessary. Do not attempt to clean and reinstall the old valve. To replace the PCV valve, disconnect the valve from its hose using pliers if necessary. Attach the proper replacement PCV valve to the hose and reinsert the valve and hose into the valve cover housing. Refer to the current Pennzoil filter application guide for the proper replacement part. A vehicle's cooling system is used to regulate engine temperature. When the engine is hot or running, it is extremely dangerous to open the radiator itself because it is under pressure. So coolant level checks and refilling are done through the radiator overflow reservoir. Inspect the fluid level in the overflow bottle. This can usually be done without opening the reservoir cap. If the level is extremely low, notify the customer that a mechanic might need to inspect the system. If you need to add coolant, notify the customer and check the lubrication guide or owner's manual for the correct type of coolant. Remove the cap from the overflow bottle and pour the antifreeze or coolant product carefully to avoid spilling. Fill to the proper level using the marks on the coolant reservoir. Use a mixture of 50% antifreeze and 50% distilled or deionized water. Replace the cap and make sure it is tight. If the fluid level is always low, inspect the cap to make sure it is in good working order. There are many types of gearboxes. The gears inside these systems are lubricated with gear oil that needs to be checked. Transfer cases, differentials, manual transmissions, and transaxles all provide different functions, but they are all inspected and maintained in a similar fashion. Clean the area around the check or fill plug or rubber grommet with a shop towel. Remove the plug or grommet using the correct size wrench. When inspecting gearboxes, make sure you're removing the check or fill plug and not the drain plug. Refer to a check chart manual if you're not sure which plug is which. Use caution when removing the check plug, as overfilled gearboxes will often spill. To check the fluid level, insert the short end of a clean Allen or hex wrench through the plug hole and into the gear oil. Be sure that the wrench does not scrape against the inside of the casing and give you an incorrect reading. The proper level is usually even with the plug or just below the opening. After determining the correct fluid, add fluid in small amounts and check the level frequently to prevent overfilling. Replace the plug and use the check chart manual to confirm the plug torque specifications. Chassis and driveline fittings are connecting points between suspension components and metal parts underneath the vehicle. Although their functions are different, they're serviced in the same way, with lubricating grease. The first step is to inspect each rubber boot and confirm that they are not brittle or cracking. Notify the customer of any abnormal or damaged boots during the consultation. To service a ball and socket joint, wipe each grease fitting or zerk clean with a shop rag. Press the grease gun straight on the fitting and hold it firmly in place. Slowly add grease to the fitting until the boot just begins to swell or bulge. Be careful not to overfill. Wipe off any excess grease with a shop rag. Follow the same procedure for lubricating grease fittings on U-joints on the drive shaft. Double check that no fittings were missed. Many newer cars have sealed joints that do not have zerk fittings and require minimal maintenance. It is advisable to consult check chart information to determine that all possible chassis lubrication points have been greased. Your lube center may also want you to check wiper blades, tires, and serpentine belts. Now you're ready to meet with the customer. Courteously and enthusiastically approach the customer and politely ask permission to go over the service review. Follow the order of the service review form. Review and explain all services performed. Stress the positive. For example, your power steering fluid level was in good shape, etc., and not just what items were needed. Make recommendations about any item that needs to be serviced or replaced based on the manufacturer's recommended service intervals. Explain how the service will affect the vehicle's operation, how much it will cost, and how long it will take to complete. Listen carefully to the customer's response so you can make note of it on the service order. Emphasize the manufacturer's recommendations. No matter what the circumstances, never argue with the customer. Never try to embarrass the customer. Never make recommendations that are not needed, and never act like a know-it-all. If the customer decides not to replace or refill any item, politely agree. If a customer chooses to purchase an air filter at a parts store, offer to install it on their next visit. When you have finished, leave a copy of the service review form with the customer and excuse yourself. When all of the services have been completed, it's time to perform a thorough safety check. Use the call and echo system to make sure all service has been performed.
Power steering cap and oil cap tight on bay 2.
Begin by starting from the rear of the car, moving to the front, checking all plugs to ensure tightness. In the case of a spin-on filter, make sure the old gasket has been removed with the old filter. Once you've checked all of the grease fittings, you're now ready to perform your under-the-hood safety check. Retrace your steps by ensuring that all caps have been replaced tightly and housings are attached securely. Now your manager may want to perform a final safety check. After the final safety check, take another look at the service order and make sure you've entered all the appropriate items. Double check to see that all of the pertinent information has been noted on the work order. Then send it to the cashier for final processing. Your customers are depending on your knowledge and professionalism to properly service each and every vehicle that enters your store. If you have any questions about the procedures you have seen in this program, please feel free to review this videotape again or refer to your Pennzoil Technician Training Manual. Safety, quality, and customer satisfaction are the Pennzoil standards of excellence. Always focus on these 3 goals, and you'll have loyal customers that return to your center time and time again.